Do you guys like tires? I hope you do, because that's what we are going to do a deep nerd out about on today's live stream. Super stoked about our guests. We've got the dynamic duo behind Ultradynamico tires. Ron, he goes under many names, and his business partner, Patrick. And we're going to go deep into, why tires, about the whole process, and why you should make the Ultradynamico choice. So welcome to the live stream, Ron and Patrick.
Hey guys. Gentle tidings, Russell. Thank you. It's good to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your backdrop there, Ron. This is the house that Tires built, huh?
Oh, it's a simple cottage in the country, Connecticut. Perhaps you've heard of it. Yeah, it's just a little. Yeah, no, this is the place that we built right next to our factory, which is on a steady, just, ever since Trump, lifted a bunch of those EPA restrictions, we're able to just dump the waste right into Long Island Sound. And with the spoils, you have this. So I'd say it paid off.
Cool.
The tire business, that is.
Yeah. And Patrick, where are you conferencing in from?
I'm in the service course in Portland, Oregon. That's where we do all of our shipping, a lot of our testing. Benedict is fond of these 15-mile picnic jaunts, but the real testing goes on out here. We do a little bit more than 15.
I don't like to break a sweat. I just like to glisten.
That's right.
15 miles is good enough.
So let's talk about how you guys started Ultradynamico. Whose idea was it? And, what was the conversation like before launching the brand?
Well, shall I start, Pats?
You go for it, Benedict.
Okay. First off, you start respecting me and calling me by my Christian name.
Sorry, Ron.
For years now, I should say we could go back 20 years. Being only 21, I know that's hard for many of you to conceptualize, but as a very small boy, I was, 90s mountain biking was really popping off, and the tires were hot. You had front and rear specifics. You had all these cool different brands out there. You had different compounds. You had all sorts of different casings, and who knows if any of them worked well. It was just all about looks. We had some nice high fashion tire brands, and everything was real cottage industry. And really, I don't know, you still felt really connected to the tire maker and the tire designer. That happened with a lot of components in the mid 90s and the mountain bike boom. Fast forward to my road racing days. That's when Pats and I met. Tires were something that we really, thread counts in particular, and how high we could pump up our Vittoria Open Corsas was really what we bonded over first. It was, are you into 150 PSI? Well, I am too. Let's go.
Let's go fast.
Let's go fast, baby. Let's just wear bibs. Just bibs. That's all we would wear. Yeah. Like wrestlers, and let's go fast. And so, from a very, very early on, Pats and I bonded over tires. This is, 2006 or so. Fast forward a little bit more. I become a bicycle cultural attaché. And I am able to get some things moving and have some of my own products, some of my own components. Tires were one thing that always eluded me, something I always wanted desperately. Mm-hmm. And, we all got into, I think we all got into really nice tires through, me personally, it was Peter Weigel, who happens to live, has a cottage much like this, just actually 15 miles away. Excuse me. And so he has been a good friend of mine for a number of years, and watching him shave down Grand Bois Etras, and I just thought that was the coolest, and I had to try that 650B thing, and so I got my first set around 2011 perhaps, and never looked back. And I was all about going high volume, low tire pressure, and cornering hard, and just feeling, being able to go out on a bike and just not have to worry about the terrain out there, because you knew you had a tire that can handle it all. So, Pat, I'm taking all your time here, Pats, but I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll.
You're feeling good. I can see it. Just continue.
Pat's really played the lottery well. He married up, and with that money, he bought Amgen stock. And if people remember, Amgen was a big, the tour of California, of course. But prior to that, they were the ones that were pumping Lance Armstrong full of EPO. Okay. And not just Lance Armstrong, as we know, this current state of professional road cycling, everybody. Now, everyone's doing it. They're doing it in secret and everything's real boring. But we're talking about the heyday when doping was the coolest thing you could do. We did it. All right. So with that Amgen money, Patrick cashed it out, cash infusion into an account called Ultradynamico. Two best friends, making some tires. I didn't have to put up the capital. It was all that Amgen money.
That's key.
That's key. That's key.
So I guess what was missing in the current tire market that you wanted to fill with your tires?
We wanted something that was a 650B by 48 with some knobs. We wanted something that was a little shallower knob than what Rene Hurst was offering at the time. We've always been huge fans of their tires. We ran them for years and still run them on bikes all the time. But we wanted something that was a little bit shallower. We had this vision of this tire that was like equally at home on the road and then like hard pack. We didn't want like a mud centered tire, which, and so with that idea, we were just like, why isn't this out there? And it took us a couple of years of just waiting to see it. We were like, when is this going to come out? When's Jan going to do it? When's it going to come out? When are we going to see this tire? And it just never materialized. And then finally, I was talking to Benedict one day on the phone and I was just so frustrated. And I think he was like, well, I bet we can figure it out. Like, we should just do it. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. At the time, I didn't realize it takes, over a year to get something made overseas, you know what I mean? And we had a couple of contacts through Ron, but, it's a pretty massive endeavor to like have something made over there. And, you make a lot of mistakes in the process and, but overall it was super, super fun, like such a fun learning process. And it was expensive, but it was also like reasonable, like a reasonable risk for us. And
what is expense?
Her whole thing was like if we only end up with like the minimum round of tires and we can sell them and break even and just we end up with like a stack of tires that we end up riding every day for the rest of our lives, we're okay with that. So basically at the time I had like a 2-year-old and I looked at him and I thought, this one's not going to college.
sorry kid.
We don't need that. So I took the college money set aside. I took the Amgen stock, I cashed it in, and then we got together with basically a notepad and some pens and started drawing tread designs and talking about what we wanted. And Benedict and I have been really close for a long time, and a lot of what he started telling you is true. A lot of it is a stretch, but it's still true.
Still true.
But we've been talking about tires for years and years and years, and like that was one of the things on bikes that we would always talk about when we got a new set. We would compare them. He and I are like we're the exact same height. We're close to the same weight.
We have the same nose for rubber.
My hairline's a little better. My mustache is a little better. His beard is better. But we ride the same size bikes, we have the same size shoes, so we've always compared things and we've always kind of been into similar types of bikes. He came from a mountain biking background as a kid. I came from a BMX background, but we kind of like met in this like road bike phase that we both kind of like. He'd ridden road bikes before, but I got into him right when I met him, and we just
Patrick shaved his legs for the first time on my dad's deck. Yeah,
I did. Yeah, I shaved my legs for the first time on Captain Pete's deck. Yeah, he was harassing me the entire time.
Yeah, sprayed him with water.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
What are you
Said-
doing, you
said,
idiot?
I'm cleaning them up here, Dad.
true.
So what did you guys base the tread around? Did you have, were there tires that you really liked and you're like, oh, if we took this tire and made this change, it would be better? Or did you start like
Yeah.
tabula
we
rasa?
had a number of tires that we had always liked the way they rode, and like just profiles and heights of knobs that we had kind of been measuring knob heights and comparing ride qualities and talking about them. And we knew like the type of casing that we wanted. We knew the qualities that we wanted in the casing. And I think we had that's what, we don't have a scientific background, but we also, we have ridden bikes like every day of our lives for our whole lives. So we had like the only thing we had going for us is just like pure amount of time that we have ridden bikes and like, and studied them. You know what I mean?
Which is who I want to, that's who I want making my products. There's been a certain disconnect, I think, in the modern age of cycling between the maker and what you get out of the box. And it's again harkening back to the mid 90s, the golden age of mountain biking. Mountain biking was a relatively new thing, and it was taking the world by storm, much like something else that's going on right now. And I'm not talking about the coronavirus. And so there's a real nice opening for these smaller brands to exist and have direct marketing. Whereas we don't have to. We don't have to appease to a catalog or like get on Mountain Bike Action or something, or like pay for advertising spaces in places, because you could do that all on your own now. So what I think is really cool about being able to start making sure that Patrick's son doesn't go to college, granted, but we're able to, with that money, start up a small tire company and have it be rider driven and rider designed. And Patrick and I, we live cycling, and we ride bikes every single day, and we're riding our tires every single day. And it takes us, being into tires that long and trying all these different tires throughout the years, and having opinions on them, which is very important. When you ride that much, you just can't ignore the equipment. And there's a certain 650B was something that I've thought for many years now is without a doubt the optimum tire size for gravel riding, mixed terrain riding, and dirt road riding, whatever you want to call it. Mountain bikes 29 all the way, but gravel bikes, you want to have that high volume 650B tire. And stuff out there that we wanted to ride didn't quite exist. Of course, you have your big brands like Maxxis and WTB with their huge garish labeling on the sides, and their ugly tread patterns. Not saying they're all ugly, but they're not necessarily our aesthetic, And so to have a tire that not only performs well but looks good, you're going through this. Picture yourself putting together like a custom build, like this is your forever bike, like you've meticulously handpicked everything on the build, right? Right down to color matching your cable ends, and then you're putting on a tire that says Maxxis, like this big,
it seriously drove us. I can't tell you how many conversations we had. We were like, this is insane that this stuff looks so bad. It's so ugly.
Bad. Like it was like, so it's really, when it comes to Rennie Erst does a great job, minimally branded. We would like to think that we complement his, what he has out there. We're going to leave more of like the slick road type stuff for him. I won't ride a bike without knobs and have it not be Rennie Erst. So, anything once you get used to our casings and his casings and the way the tires are thought out, there's no going back. You don't go back and just be like, I WTB and Maxxis, and that's like running SRAM. You just don't care.
So let's talk about casings really quick. Like when you guys, so you have a tire design, what were your options in terms of casing, and why did you choose the one that you guys went with?
How high can you count, Russ?
That's it. That's
On a good day.
on a good day. We're talking Egyptian cotton here.
Oh wow.
We Bennett, do you want to field this question?
Sure. You know, that was one of the most fun parts about this whole, you know, you send an email in the dark to Paneracer, and a carrier pigeon takes it to Japan and deciphers it, and a month later they email you back.
Yeah.
You know, it was what they once we were in the door and they realized that we didn't want to just copy. They say that they get a lot of people that just want to. There's a lot of open source tread patterns out there. Excuse me, if you haven't noticed, where you can, a lot of these like cheaper tire manufacturers just take a tire that's already existed, or I shouldn't say cheaper, just less inventive, takes a tire that already exists and just has it remade.
Yeah.
And so once they realized that we didn't want to do that, we wanted to start from scratch and design our own tires. We were in the door and they presented us with just a plethora of options as far as our tread compounds, our casings, our thread counts, our beads. You know, the list goes on and on. It was extremely customizable.
And they don't share what Renee Hurst is doing. They don't share what the other brands that they work with do. It's a process just with their engineers, and you know, and then that's when the testing came in, and we you know, Bennings and I are in agreement on what we wanted before we even sent the email, you know. So it was pretty easy for us to narrow down what we wanted, and then we worked with them on certain things, and then we just started getting first batches of prototypes and making small changes. And
what's the difference between a good casing and a bad casing?
Just
well, you want this one, Pats? Okay, I'll.
I mean, I can jump in. It's hard to jump in over here, but
yeah.
I mean, to me, it's just a smoothness, like kind of like a. I don't want to name names here, but you know a dead tire when you feel it. It just feels kind of sluggish.
Gator skin, like a continental gator skin,
or like those old like Specialized armadillos that were like red sidewalls that were like so brutal, like, you know.
I mean, it completely makes sense when you think of it, you know. And Patrick and I rode 150 psi on Texas Chip and Seal.
Yeah.
You know, we on aluminum bikes. We know what feedback. We know feedback.
Yeah, major. We're talking major feedback.
I'm surprised you guys can feel anything at this point.
But even on a larger tire with a really stiff casing, like a super puncture protected casing,
right?
It just doesn't, like, to me, the grip, especially off road, like you notice that it doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't. It doesn't like grab the ground as easy. It just doesn't flex whenever you hit roots or bumps or rocks or whatever. And it just is like a harsher ride off road, you know.
Off-road. And being with a mountain bike background, you know, we were always about, you know, even in pre-tubeless days, it was all about running latex tubes, you know, and being able to, you know, talking your tires so that the tube can squirm inside it, you know, all these funky tricks that we had. And having a tire that, you know, you're running a rigid mountain bike, and even so back then, maybe you had like, you know, 30 millimeters of usable travel. The extra 20 didn't really work, and you're always and these tires were no bigger than. I love riding my home trails after I leave the gilded gates, and be able to I'm still riding the same trails that I rode as a teenager in the mid 90s. And as a 1-year-old. And so and it's incredible to feel like I'm riding them on our tires, which are in effect actually larger, a more capable mountain bike tire than the most state-of-the-art mountain bike tire back in the day, you know, say like a 1.9 Ritchie Z-Max or something, which is what I would have run. And it's incredible to you know, you're like, wow, tire pressure was so important back then, but it's so important now. And just having that tire be your suspension, you know, it's your connection, it's your contact patch. It's the most important part of the bike, you know. And so if it's tuning that in to your riding style and realizing, you know, knowing that you have a light tire that you can't just, run into things, that you got to dance around a little bit, and just feel the motion of the trail and be light on your feet, and just, be light on the trail, because you have a tire that's as soft as a baby's butt.
And I would say even on the road, to me, like I notice a casing even on the road, it just feels so much smoother. It's like all the little vibrations are gone when you've got a heavier, thicker, protected casing that doesn't flex. I just feel like I notice all of those vibrations a lot more, and you're more sore at the end of the ride. So
yeah. So I'm a big fan of 650B, and it sounds like you guys are as well. Why do you think the bike industry has been so slow to adopt it?
Well,
yeah, I mean, I just think everybody has the 700 wheel size was just pumped into everyone for so long, and it's tough to get people to buy a whole new wheel set, And until these bikes start coming spec'd with the 650s, which this last season, I think you're starting to see the major brands starting to spec some of them with 650 wheels. I think until that like fully comes through, people aren't going to try it. Like everybody that I know that has tried them is just like, yeah, this is superior. This is great. The bike feels great. But I think until the masses see them on, stock Specialized and stuff, it's going to be.
What I really think it is we have a very, gravel, just in the essence of the term gravel, which is, what does that bring up? Dirty Kanza, essentially. You have if the participants of an event like that are post roadies, right? They're coming. They've become disenchanted with training, doing intervals on a feeder road, dodging cars left and right, and they're just dipping their toes in this little gravel thing, but they're still approaching gravel with the way that they approach the road, which is pace lines, going fast, running 700 by 30. 700 by 38 is the mark of a post roadie. Like that is, that is the mark. If you're running 700 by 35, you can't even be considered a post roadie. You're still a roadie.
Yeah.
And so, you may have zerts on your bike, something like that, and you're just dipping your toe in, and 650B to me, and I know to Patrick too, and not to be elitists here, but we are. It's
don't hide it.
It's maybe 3 or 4 steps beyond that 700 by 38. You sure, like those Midwestern gravel races are great, and like Mid-South, for example, that's a great race, has a great feel to it and everything. But a lot of these races out there don't have a lot of elevation gain, don't have a lot of real heavy duty chunk, single track, a lot of the other elements that I like to, for the most part, like to experience on my rides. Like I don't like to, I don't like to just, I like a dynamic choice out there. I want to be able to do everything.
Yeah.
And so that's what 650B is to me. It gives you more options out there, comfortably. Yeah. Sure, you could ride a 700 by 38 on just about anything if you're a good enough rider. But
I will interrupt Ron here to say that we are going to have a 700 tire coming.
We sold out
in June. Yeah, we sold out.
700 by what size?
It's 42 point, who knows? Question mark. But I've been running it. I've been running the prototypes for a little while now, and I actually really like it. It surprised me. It's a 700 version of our Kava tread, and it's a fun size. I like that. I think that 42 millimeter width is a really good width. It's really nice. So yeah, we'll have those coming for those people that are diehard 700 folks.
So speaking of choices, you guys have two distinct tire lines, right? Kava, and is it rose or rosé?
It's a rosé.
It's a rosé. So who's the rider for each of those tires?
Ooh. Oh yeah. Well, the rosé was our first tire, and that was all about, of course, as Patrick explained early on, we wanted it to be a fast rolling knobby tire, essentially but I wanted it to have, we really wanted it to be able to corner, and I in my testing a number of different tires in Tucson years ago when I was doing these ill-advised long rides solo
16, 17 milers.
Yeah, I was actually sweating, not glistening. And I tried two slicks, a slick with a knobby front, two knobbies, and a bunch of different sizes, 26, 650B. And I was sponsored by Specialized at the time, so I had unlimited S-Works tires, which are, if you want to support Specialized, they are really nice tires. They don't necessarily look that great, but they're very, very good. And so it was a nice benchmark to kind of compare your tires to, because that they have unlimited resources as far as engineering money goes. So I kind of use that as a benchmark when it comes to knobs, and kind of feeling what different knobs did, and the reactions of different tire pressures and on these. As you know, in Tucson, you have a lot of different terrain. You have some real loose, like kitty litter gravel, some hard pack, real chunky stuff, some exposed limestone, slicing your tires left and right if you don't pay attention. And so, I wanted something that rolled and was able to corner hard, because I realized that it doesn't matter how low you run your rat trap passes. You run them at 20 psi, you hit a loose corner hard, you're going down, and so contrary to what I feel, I don't like to say bad things about Jan, because I do look up to him as somewhat of a German god. And
he's a hero. He's a hero.
But he says that knobs don't necessarily matter on gravel, and I can't disagree more. Right. Maybe in wet conditions when you have a little bit more tack in the dirt, but for the most part, a lot of people out west are riding some really sketchy gravel stuff that you lose traction on almost immediately once you hit the brakes. And so it was important that we had some purchase on there, and a more aggressive side knob once you do start rolling it over. And once we got those first samples with the rosé, and took them out and did my standard test in Tucson and Connecticut, and I couldn't believe that we hit the mark. It's kind of like one of those things where you just don't really know until after you've already spent the money on the mold and they send you the tire.
I will say, your question was a great question, Russ. And our original goal was to have this one tire that kind of was more dirt focused, and was primarily a dirt tire that ran fast enough on the road to where it was still efficient enough to not be a bummer. Mm-hmm. But we also, as soon as we started the process with them, I wouldn't say as soon, maybe 3 or 4 months in, we were doing all this hard work on developing the casing with them, and we had the tread from the first email, so we had spent most of the time at that point developing the casing, and it just made sense to us to start thinking ahead to if we can sell enough of these tires to make up this enormous mold cost, what's next? And it was kind of something that we had also always done and talked about, which was kind of combining different styles of tire on one bike. So, coming from a BMX background, that was something that you just always did. You had a dirt, like a shallow knob up front for the days you were at the trails. And then you had a kind of a little bit more of a slick for when you rode street or when you rode ramp. And so, that was always apparent to me. And I was always confused in the road world why everybody just rode the same tires front and rear. I was like, well, I guess that makes sense. But, talking with Benedict, he's like, yeah, we combined tires mountain biking all the time when I was growing up. And so for us, that became a huge kind of talking point. And why isn't anybody kind of promoting this and doing this, kind of mixing tires and having not a tire system, but essentially something that works well together, so you can mix and match, and aesthetically they still look really good together. So that's when
Right.
we started developing that second tire, was a few months into the process of the first one, with that in mind. Like we knew certain characteristics that we wanted to work, you know, together with the rosé and that knob up front. And we kind of worked towards having, you know, like a file tread that was a little bit of grip, if you ran them, you know, front and rear, but was, you know, optimal as a rear tire if you wanted to run the knob up front, if you were doing more road miles than you were gravel. And so we kind of looked at it in that regard when we started working on them. And yeah, I mean, I think the second tire came a lot faster. We had the idea for, I mean, the tread's really basic and really simple. But yeah, it's just been fun to ride them together, and to kind of like, we've had a lot of people email us and ask us about running it. We call it the mullet setup. And it's been fun to kind of introduce people to that concept. And we actually do get a lot of emails asking like, hey, I live in this kind of terrain, and what do you think? I ride about this percentage of gravel versus road. And
it's a lot of fun to mix and match them, because we have tires that work well when you double up on them, you know, a Cava front, Cava rear, rosé front, rosé rear, front, rosé rear. But you have, you know, they also work together. So it's in a way you have all these different options of whatever terrain you want to ride. And you know, a lot of people don't factor that in. When you're riding your normal tires, you notice how much quicker your rear tire wears out. That's for a reason, because most of your weight is over the rear tire most of the ride. It's only when you're braking does your front tire come into, you know, does your front tire really bite in if you have knobs. And so you could run a knobbier front and not really, you know, you're not going to cut down on your rolling resistance all that much. And then when it comes time to brake, which is when you really want traction, you know, you really want traction when you're braking, especially at speeds. And so, you know, was it 90% of your braking, 80% of your braking? We have to ask our scientists. Is done with the front wheel, you know, because all your momentum just heaves forward. And so
and you're cornering, like when you're cornering on gravel,
hard cornering, and when you grab the front brake and just feather it a little bit, if you're running a rosé in the front, it's going to grab. So if you're running a Cava on the front, it's going to massage. So
I'm curious, what tire pressures do you guys personally run? Like, assuming 650, you're riding the 650B versions.
I'm around 22, like 20 in the front, 22 in the rear. It just kind of around there.
Yeah.
It's nice to experiment how low you can go.
Yeah.
Of course you do lose a little bit, you know, you do, depending upon what rim you're using, it's going to fold over.
Depends on the rim. I've got a pretty wide set of rims on one of my bikes, and then on the other set I've got a little bit narrower, and I go a little harder for that set for sure.
But yeah, I'm right about at the same 20 25 30 rear, 25 front for me. I run narrower rims because I only believe in rim brakes now.
When you guys were designing the tread, like, is there like tread CAD, or did you just draw it on the napkin and send it?
No, we drew it. Yeah, we drew it on with pencil on graph paper.
Oh, really?
Yeah, pencil and graph paper. We're designing a mountain bike tire right now that Randall Sklar of Danglebongs is
helping us
actually doing it in CAD. So we sent him we sent him the drawings with the crayons and such, and he put it into the CAD.
We had I should say that we drew it on paper and talked through a number of different iterations of that graph paper, and then I have a friend of mine who has a little bit of CAD background, and so I sent it to him, and he gave me a couple of rough stuff to send to Japan. And I think the Japanese engineers really respected our effort. But there was it might have led us down the wrong path. It's, you know, could have added a few months, we're not sure. Might have been better off. We might have just sent the graph paper in the end we got exactly what we wanted.
We did, which is remarkable when you send in the crayons and graph paper. and give them several tens of thousands of dollars later, you have.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that I'm telling you, the thing that has been to me the most fun is like all the different feelings of, man, this is insane, I can't believe this is happening moments that we've had. Like the first one was like receiving this. I actually have the envelope right here. This envelope from Japan, this like really cool old manila Pan-Eraser envelope from Japan.
And we've been riding Pan-Eraser tires for over 20 years. So this is just like we're huge Pan-Eraser fans.
So you get this envelope with this rubber sample in it, like a little like swath of rubber basically. And then the next one is like a schematic, and like each one like and then when we got the prototypes in, I was just like, this is unreal. I can't believe. But that was the moment of truth. Like, okay, here we go. Like we've already dumped so much money and time into this. Like, and it was pouring rain, Russ, like dumping rain here, cold, like typical Portland kind of winter. And I just, of course, mounted them up instantly, took them out, had to ride trail with them. So it was just like all slop. I'm just riding for like 2 hours in the slop. I come back in the dark and I'm just completely head to toe in mud, just covered. And I was like, well, they shed mud. But those moments of just like, I can't believe I can't believe we did this. Like, and then when the first order landed, it was insane. Like, how are we going to
opening up just boxes and
boxes of tires,
tires everywhere, tires.
Scrooge McDuck swimming in tires,
swimming in that. Yeah. Oh my God. Swimming in Egyptian cotton. Yeah. It's just, it was just, being a tire fan first and foremost, to actually, and all of the designers that I've respected, as many people I suppose who are listening to, bicycles and the tech aspect of bicycles, the build, to me, that's even more interesting than actually riding. And so, to have, and a tire is something that's so final, right? That's not something that you could just go down to your basement and make, and so to have this dream with your best friend for years and years and years, finally be like, hey, should we do this? And we do it, and you go through and you have your very humble beginnings with the crayons and graph paper, and all of a sudden you've got a room with hundreds and hundreds of tires that you designed. It's that's euphoria.
Yeah.
If there's something better than that, I don't know.
Well, the thing, and
then to be able to afford this afterwards.
Yeah. I would say that the best, I would say the thing that was a topper to seeing all those tires and Scrooge McDucking was actually going to the factory in Japan.
That's cool.
Spending like the whole day, like touring the factory, seeing the tires being made, and like just in the room with the engineering team and like the production, like the factory manager who'd been there for 25 years, like, like just meeting all of them and talking to them and getting like insights into kind of, because we'd just been emailing with them for well over a year, and like thousands of emails,
Right. And, so having gone through the process, if you were to do it again, would you do anything different?
I said, it's funny. I said for a long time, I wished that we had gone immediately to Japan and met everybody, because then I think that might have sped the process up a little bit. But at the same time, like now having been there and visited, I'm glad that we went when we did, because we had a year's worth of really intimate knowledge of what was going on and how it worked. And so when we were there, we had great questions. I felt like we had a really good basis of knowledge to ask them really good, direct questions. And then, the experience was like, we kind of had this knowledge of what we thought we were going to see, and we saw it. And then we also gained this additional, I think if we had gone like within the first couple of months of trying to do this, it would have been so overwhelming, and we would have just like not, it wouldn't have been as productive. So that was the thing I always said. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, I've been really happy with like the speed of our growth, and like, it's been like totally doable. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I mean,
a lot of fun, that's what JFF is all about. You know?
Yeah.
Totally. That's just for fun.
Just for fun. That's our new casing that's coming out.
That's our new casing.
Nice.
It's affordable.
Yeah. So is there anything anything you learn new about tires in the process that you didn't consider before?
Yeah, that's
so much.
Yes,
so much. I mean,
we had a good
like what's a super deep nerd tire thing you had to learn along the way?
I think siping. That's been a pretty cool. That was something that I didn't really consider. You know, this what we're talking about are those lines that you see on a lot of your treads. They're directional. You know, that matters whether they're put there for braking or for traction. Well, you know, rolling traction. So it's that was really fun to dive into, and I had always wondered what those things were.
For me, it was like in the process when we were there and just kind of understanding the way the molds work and the way, in particular, the way the beads interface. Like the mold has to be specifically made for a tubeless bead. And so we were always like, why can't they just modify the mold? Well, when you go and you see the mold, it's like this massive steel. It's amazing to look at.
It's unreal. Oh my
God.
God.
How
that's
big is it?
That's what you're paying for. It's,
yeah.
I mean, I would estimate that thing's got to be at least a ton.
They're just
really,
yeah.
it's incredible.
And the machine
and it's machined out of there. The tread is.
So that was like one of those things that I was like, why, like I don't understand why all these companies have these great tires, but they don't do a tubeless version. Well, because you have to make a whole new mold for the tubeless version, and the molds are really expensive. So
you can't just tweak. Yeah, it's very hard to change something once it's set in the mold, And so it's just it's everything. It's the tire, the casing, everything is pressed by that final vulcanizing process that makes it either tubeless or tubed.
Right.
So there's a lot to. I think right when we first were talking about doing a tire, we sat down, and I still stand by this, that downhill mountain bikers know more about tires than just about anybody. They are the true tire nerds. They all have their own special set of knob clippers, and that they just keep in their back pocket. They may start clipping knobs on the trail side, just because they're not happy with what they're running. And so we had a suspension tech, Anthony Diaz in Durango, Colorado.
Yeah.
He's got a mohawk. And so does his logo. He's he's not just a punk, he's a tire nerd. He gave us a crash course about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years
durometer
ago, and everything we wanted to know. He brought out the whiteboard and told us. And so we said, well, if you ever want to get on a dirt road drop bar bike, we got tires for you. He just laughed.
He just laughed us out of the room. Here's the door, boys. Could care less.
Nice. Cool. Well, I think I'm going to open it up to video questions for you guys, Patreon supporters in the Zoom room. If you got questions for Ron or Pats, raise a little blue hand. And if you guys have questions in the YouTube chat, type away, and I will forward them over. So we've got a couple questions here.
Oh, this would be real embarrassing if we didn't get it.
Okay, I think you're unmuted. Okay.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey,
good. How are you?
I don't know if this was covered already. I was kind of back and forth, paying attention and doing other stuff, but I was curious to know your thoughts about running 2 different width tires in front versus back. And my second question is for Ron, what brought you back to rim brakes?
These are wonderful questions. Well, should I let you answer the first?
I'll answer the first. So we really like running a little bit wider tire up front and then a little narrower in the back. I think that there's a limit. Like you don't want to do just a giant front tire and the really narrow rear tire, because it's going to offset the geometry of the bike a little bit. But within a few millimeters, I think we've done it a number of times. It's nice because it further gives you that cushion on the front wheel. And you have, because it's larger, you have a little bit more grip through the corners. So I did it. I ran an S-Works fast track on the front, like a big 2.1 for a while before we had a tire company. And then I ran like a Bruce Gordon Rock and Road in the back, which was a little bit narrower. And I really liked that combo. That was a really nice combo. The Bruce Gordon is like pretty decent on the road. And that fast track up front was like, I ran that in Tucson for like a training camp for basically 2 weeks, and it was super rugged. It's basically the Arizona Trail we just rode every day, and that setup was great for it. So
you oftentimes have much more tire clearance in your front than you do in the rear, and so that's a great way to stuff some suspension in. Now, we should note that our tires, when you pair the Cava with the Rosé, that we made sure that because there are a lot of people out there, some deep, heavy nerds out there that have a problem with, with changing the geometry of the bike.
Right.
And so we made sure that our Cava and Rosé both had the same effective outside diameter, which actually gives the Rosé up front slightly less volume than the Cava, because the Cava doesn't have any tread, but effective outside diameter is the same. When we do make a mountain bike tire, I think that we will definitely encourage people to run that 2.2 or 2.3, whatever it ends up being, with a Cava in the rear. And I think that'll be a really cool combo.
Yeah. That's one of the things we love about tires, is just like, you just kind of experiment a little bit.
Yeah, you can change your bike so much with just swapping around
and
the tires.
Change just the way one bike can feel completely different depending on, what you run. So
yeah. So
Ron, why rim brakes?
I feel, I bought into disc brakes wholeheartedly. I really bought into them. Okay. And I've always thought of myself as, I'm not affected by the bicycle industry, right? Like, I like to do my own thing, and yet the bicycle industry told me I needed disc brakes, and I bought in. And so there I was, just going along with it for maybe like 4 years or so. Okay. And then 2 summers ago, I have a Rivendell Sam Hilborn, and I have some Paul Neo Retros cantilevers on there. And I did we did the Banff to somewhere in Montana. Where do you live, Russ?
Missoula.
Here we go.
Yeah, I think we ran into you guys.
We did Banff to Missoula. And I was like, this is like a heavy duty mountain bike trail, and you're going to be loaded and whatever. Or it's not a heavy duty mountain bike trail, but you know what I mean. It's a trail. It's a off road. You're going to be doing there's a lot of elevation gain, and you're going to be descending fast, and it's going to be wet conditions, all the stuff that they say you need disc brakes for, right? And so what I found was the contrary. That bike was something that I committed to the entire summer, because we were also filming California Gold directly beforehand. And so for California Gold, if you haven't seen it, it's probably the best film. I mean, that's really what bought this palace here. You should watch it. Anyway, it's a small Super 8 film that we did a few years ago. It was cool. Anyway, the rule was no disc brakes on the film, because I wanted everything to have a certain look. And I think so anyway, on that ride, and also it was 3 months on that bike, nothing but rim brakes. I usually switch bikes all the damn time. And so I just was so impressed with the modulation and the feedback of the brakes, how the returns felt. There's no mush to it. I was able to really control my speed much more than I can with a cable actuated, or even a hydraulic disc for that matter. And the simplicity of the system. And I deep mud, wet. I just never had an issue. And I was like, what's the deal here? And I've ridden cantilevers that are terrible. And there are a lot of them out there that are terrible. A lot of the low profile ones have no power whatsoever, in my opinion. And so they really have, like, poorly set up cantilevers, poorly set up rim brakes in general, or just poorly designed, have just wreaked havoc on the reputation of a rim brake. And so moving, and also the aesthetics of the bike, everyone I think will agree that a rim brake just has a more elegant look to it. There's nothing protruding. They're not trying to stuff cables where they're not supposed to go.
And you can make a nicer fork.
Yeah,
you
the
can make a
forks are
much
the big deal.
That's
Yeah.
where we're getting to. And the fork, that's the biggest thing, right?
Most
And when you're
important.
riding an all steel bike, which is what Patrick and I prefer, you have the testing standards warrant you to have a fork that's so overbuilt that it just becomes like it weighs as much as the frame, if not more. You can shave a pound or more off of a fork because it has to deal with those stressing forces of the disc brake, because you're always or with a raked fork in particular, that disc brake is always trying to unrake your fork, essentially. Even with through axle, it's still just trying to bend against your what's supposed to be. It's most of the time it's just a fashion statement now, but on a rim brake bike, that's cushioning, that's built into the bike as a shock absorber. And so you're completely negating that. You're getting a much harsher ride. And when you're really tuning into the tires and all the other components that you've set up for that optimized ride, and then you put on a 4-pound steel fork with no give to it whatsoever, or for that matter, a 5. I don't know how much those NV forks cost when you're a huge. I don't want to. No names dropping here. You can erase that. Sorry, NV. We like you. Every single custom bike has a damn NV fork on it. Why aren't these builders making forks? It's a big liability. It's a big liability to make forks, I will admit. But it's just the fork is so important. And I want a fork that flexes, and you're not going to get that safely with a disc fork. Yeah. And part of this is a visceral reaction to the component design that we're seeing from the big makers right now. I just want to go as far away from that as I possibly can as a statement to say that, no, you're not turning cycling into some like robotic thing that we do, like on these strange like cyborg machines.
You're not on Zwift.
Yeah, right. Too much sweating, not enough glistening.
Right. It's hard to glisten on Zwift. It's just
very hard.
Okay, we got a question. We got a question here from Steve.
Thanks for the question.
Steve, you are unmuted, I think. Unmute, Steve.
Yeah, there we go.
Hi,
Technology. Hey guys, thanks for the entertaining conversation.
Yeah.
As a young man who's maybe the combination of Ronnie and Nams in weight, I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the casing design and thread count, loaded versus unloaded, and also what your thoughts are on optimal rim width for your tires.
Good questions.
Really good questions.
That's
so we have a new casing coming in June. That's kind of going to be like it's going to be in the middle between our race casing, which is our super light, unprotected. It's our most supple casing. And
higher than you can count with threads. Yeah.
Our Robusto casing, right? Our Robusto casing we designed for really rugged terrain where you were more likely to slice the sidewall. So it had some protection in the sidewalls, just to kind of guard against those slashes that kind of ruin.
No protection on the top, just on the sidewalls. Tubeless has pretty much made tread reinforcement a thing of the past. That's something that you would do to stop thorns from going in, or it's the sidewall where you always see these tires fail.
Right. So the Robusto we designed to kind of be, like I said, for really rugged. Like we had a friend of ours do the Atlas Mountain Race, which is just like really gnarly, rocky gravel and trail. And we also wanted a tire that was a little bit stronger, more robusto for touring, for loaded touring. And this middle casing that we're going to have is going to be we wanted something that kind of like balanced them out a little bit. Was an option that is a little bit more durable on the sidewall. It doesn't have protection, but it's a little thicker layer of rubber on the sidewall for just a little more rugged riding. It's not quite as fragile as the race compound sidewalls. But it was important to us that it's a little bit of a little more lively tire than the Robusto. The Robusto, because of the protection on the sidewall, the casing doesn't quite flex as much as, I mean, not nearly as much as the race. So we wanted something that was like definitely like right in the middle. So what we got is a tire that basically it's close to the same weight as the Robusto, but it has a closer ride to the race. It's not quite as supple as the race, but it's kind of right in the middle. And that's what I would recommend for someone that's like, I mean, I don't know if you're going to do touring or not, but that casing we have coming is what I'd recommend. Otherwise, you know, it depends a lot on what you're riding. You know, if you're riding, I mean, I think it just depends. Like if you're riding really rugged stuff, I don't know where you live, but then I would err on the safer side of getting the Robusto.
It really, you know, a lot of it depends upon where you're riding, your riding style. You know, are you somebody who gets flats on the reg, or are you someone, you know, we all know those types. Every ride you go out with, you know, that's I mean, been real, you know, that's what's been really great about this whole process is that Jan already took care of that for us. You know, he started a whole culture on people being proud of their flat tires. Yeah, because that showed the world that you were pushing the envelope. You know, you were pushing the envelope. You may not have the skill just yet. You know, but you're aspiring, and it's character building, those flat repairs. And so, you know, it's all about, you know, sure, you know, if you're weighing a little bit more, you're running more tire pressure. And so someone the weight of myself and Noms together, in truthful, I'm 170, Noms is, so you're 270 about. It's a big, that's entirely Robusto. I wouldn't recommend the race casing for somebody over like 210 or so.
The hard thing is when you air the race casing up, when you add pressure into the race casing, you're actually, it's kind of funny because you're more prone to flat because the tire doesn't deform as much when it hits sharper, rougher objects, and you're more prone to just like tear the tire up.
I guess there's a balance between the actual rider's weight and how much they're making that tire flex at a certain PSI. But yeah, we could really split some hairs here. I would really, you know, it's all about if you're confident. We always say if you're the type of person who goes and doesn't get a lot of flats, you know, you dance around rocks, you don't run into them. Then you're race casing all the way. Someone like Taylor Finney, for example. Yeah. I can't. Of course, he's on the flow. You know, he gets whatever he wants. He's, you know, ex-pro, you know, very handsome guy. He's big. You know, he's about 210. Who knows what he is now? He's been stuck in Spain this whole lockdown. Yeah. 7 weeks without riding. He could be 250 by now. And
he's aggressive. He rides
aggressive. He rides aggressive. If you remember him at Dirty Kansas last year, I don't remember how many. I think he had 5 flats, something like that. Our entire team was on. Of course, we weren't necessarily racing, but our entire team was on prototype race casing, and we didn't suffer any flats. And so, you know, Taylor gets on our tires on our race casing now, and he brings them back in ribbons after every ride. You know, I just tell him, like, you are not certified. You can't. You are not allowed to ride these tires. But he wants the gray color, and he gets them for free. So he keeps shredding them.
So Benedict, why don't you address his second question was a good one. Why don't you address the optimal rim width for
optimal rim width
48 millimeter tires?
That's
a good question. It's a hard one.
It's a really good question. It's a hard one. I think that this is really interesting right now because, you know, there was again during my disc brake days. Yes, thinking back. I was running some really wide rim widths. You know, inner diameters of 30 millimeters and more. And so on a tire that would be 48 millimeters or so. And I initially thought the profile was pretty cool, and a lot of interestingly enough, a lot of top manufacturers now are making these really wide rims.
Yeah, the new specialized revolves.
Revolves are so wide.
They're
Yeah.
super wide. I think they're
Well,
30.
it's a really nice wheel, and it's like 1,300 grams for the wheel set. And
Yeah.
they're like 32 millimeters internal or something. Is
I
that
think
right?
it's either 30 or 32 millimeter internal. It's
It's
pretty.
insane. Yeah, they're
that's
pretty wide, and
pretty
they're
wide.
marketing those for 42 and above, like some pretty narrower. I mean, it's so anyway. I think that you do get some, you do get the full, you get an interesting profile. It's nice to corner on something like that. You're not going to get the squirm the unpredictable, some people would say unpredictable squirm that you get out of running a narrower rim width. But the downside is it really exposes the sidewalls. And when you're running a light tire and you have, there really isn't any sort of, it's just stretched out to its max. And you're not, when you're rolling on the top of the tire and you're cornering a little bit, there's a certain risk of coming onto the sidewall with your actual sidewall. You see my hands? The sidewall is actually, when you're cornering the side, because of the profile of the tire, you're actually cornering on the sidewall and not on the actual tread.
Yeah.
And so it makes it so the sidewall, a light tire, it becomes particularly vulnerable in a scenario like that. And you lose a bit of suspension in the rim, I feel, or in the whole setup. I like a little bit of squirm. Just like I like to run really light tubing on my steel bikes. I like to have a slightly narrower rim width that's going to allow the tire to squirm a little bit and have some dynamic suspension, not just up and down, but
so if we were to give you a number, I'm saying like 23 to 25 millimeter internal. And you're saying narrower, Benedict. You like a 21 millimeter internal?
I wouldn't.
You're not going to commit. I don't see a commitment out of him.
I'm not going to commit, but I'm not going to say no to a 20. I think that you could build a really nice light rim with that, and you can have some real lateral suspension, which you're not going to get with a really wide rim. And so when you're running a low tire pressure and you're getting some squirm, they're building it into those weird new zip rims that some people may have seen that have like this. I wonder what they call it.
I wonder have you looked at the internal width on those? I haven't seen.
It doesn't matter the internal width. It's built in to have the rim actually flex, and it flexes in all these funky ways. It's kind of like a motocross thing. Yeah. They were on the Radavis not long ago. Want to look it up if you want to look it up.
Two quick questions. One from the YouTube chat. Aaron Vasquez asks, "What's a good tubeless rim brake rim?"
The Velocity Quill is my personal favorite.
Velocity Quill. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And I think I'll close out with one last question. It sounds like you're a fan of 90s mountain biking. Gravel's a thing now. What is that line between gravel and 90s mountain biking? Like, at what point do you say this tire stops becoming a gravel bike tire and should be on a mountain bike?
On a mountain bike or a 90s mountain bike? Well, that I'm going to get there's going to be a bit of a soapbox here, Russ. I think the 2020s are all about reclaiming mountain biking. Okay. I know that Anthony Diaz, the guy who taught us how to design tires, isn't listening here. He's off lifting weights or listening to Hoobastank. So he's mountain biking has become, mountain biking, mark my words, mountain biking will be absorbed by the e-bike market. E-mountain bikes are going to be huge. They already are huge. They're huge all over Europe. That's how you take the chairlift out of the equation on enduro runs, and you're able to just up and send it down. And so pedaling isn't necessarily a concern when it comes to modern mountain bike design. So I will say that a modern mountain bike is just an electric dirt bike. And reclaiming the mountain bike is something that is going to be post gravel. Okay. We're going to see people get really disenchanted with these boring gravel races and want a little bit more of an adventure. If you look back to, again, mountain bike racing in the 90s, we even had Mercury Tour of the Rockies. That was like a stage race that they did for mountain biking, things like that. But these mountain bikes were essentially shit gravel bikes back then. Like they weren't good. And so we have the bike that I ride on the road, like I would consider like my road bike right now, is a more capable mountain bike than those things were. And so we're going to have a really, really fun kind of mashup of it's going to be led by the drop bar, like the wide drop bar. We're widening up our drop bars and putting fat tires on our drop bar bikes. You ride to the trailhead, you ride gravel roads to the trailhead, you get to the single track, you rip the single track, you get on a little bit of road on the way home, or vice versa. It's just mixing all of that stuff in. Or you're doing a ride that's all dirt and single track, like way out in the middle of nowhere, and and that's like your racing scenario now. And so it's I think we're going to see the tires get wider still. And again, I think it's really exciting to imagine the kind of stuff that you can put together when you have, not only you have these bikes evolving, but you also have GPS, so you're able to actually find the stuff and not get lost out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
I got lost in that answer.
We're reclaiming mountain bikes.
It was fun though, Ben. I can listen to you talk. I have listened to you talk.
So what do you guys think of suspension on gravel bikes? I get this question asked a lot. Like, are you excited by the 9-ram CR or low fork now?
It's disgusting.
It's really dumb.
Sorry, I don't mean to.
It's absolutely disgusting. It's intriguing. Don't get me wrong. I think people, engineers need this stuff to.
It's like a train crash. You got to look at it. But it's just like, what are they doing? Why?
What I find so fascinating is like Specialized, for example, with the Future Shock. I had one. I rode it once and then sold it on eBay. That was part of my pay. And so but I had to know what it was like, right? And so you have this weird thing that's built into your head tube, okay? And you can't take it off. It's on there, okay? Like I look on eBay for like bikes that are like 20 years old, and they're still great if they're a steel, just normal ass bike, right? And you put fat tires and drop bars on it, and it's a gravel bike. But this bike in particular this is not only this bike. You look at what's the Canyon one with those like
the Grail bars.
The Grail bars. I've ridden one of those too.
Yeah.
It's these solutions are fixing problems that didn't exist if you just rode a 26.0 clamp handlebar first off, then you have suspension.
or you just ran nice tires with proper pressure.
With proper pressure, that's suspension. You don't, if you're running an oversized handlebar 700 by 35 pumped up to 65, 70 PSI, then yes, you're going to need a little squishy thing on your stem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I think like a core thing to us with bikes is just simplicity and, celebrating like the beauty of bikes, and we look at every aspect of the bike like that, and every part that goes on a bike, we kind of look at in that regard. And when I see those images, it just, my blood starts to boil.
It's like, it's like a Band-Aid on a solution that,
right.
I mean, it's a Band-Aid on a problem that was like, maybe it may have been a problem, but it solved, you unsolved that problem first, and now you have to resolve it. And just to market your shit, just to sell more stuff. Like, that's it. You've got to change it. Like you've got to make that bike, just like your iPhone, in 3 years, you got to get another one.
Yeah. I feel like in some ways the bike industry has put itself in the corner, in particular the road racing end, because every year, every new bike is lighter and stiffer. And at some point, you're riding a concrete block, and now with gravel, stiffer isn't necessarily good. Now they have to backpedal and do things like integrated suspension or full suspension. So I'm curious, like in the next couple of years, if we'll see the end of lighter and stiffer and them trying to build in more compliance somehow.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I think that there's, we talked about like roadie 2.0, like the roadies that are coming into it, they want to spend money on stuff, and they have been ingrained in them in some regard to like look for the brand new thing every season and spend a bunch of money on something that the industry is telling them is the greatest thing on the planet, So yeah, I think we're going to continue to see it because there's not a lot of original ideas coming out of the big movers in the industry.
Everyone looks at the small brands.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and that's what happened with that was mountain biking too. It's and so hopefully we're able to keep this cottage industry thing going for gravel,
for sure,
and a gravel 2.0 when we move on to actual original mountain biking.
I'm excited about what Ron, what you've been able to do, what you guys have been able to do with the tires. Like, I mean, you guys have wagged the dog, to some extent, especially with the handlebars. Initially when the bars, the wide drop bars came out, that was the complete anomaly, and now all the big brands have their version of it. Some of them not committing, as large, but everyone.
Some of them have. I've been surprised. A lot of them have committed even more so. 750. This is like, that's, I can't, I've had to actually come back from my 67s and I ride 61s now. So I see people who are like 5'5" on 750s, and you're like, whoa, that's a, but that's fun. It's fun. That's the cool part, is just to be able to have these things and have those options. Right. And if you like to tinker, a handlebar swap, I realize that's a tough one. You got to, if you're not if you're an amateur mechanic, the handlebar swap, having to redo the cables, because when you go wider, inevitably the worst is when you have hydro brakes and you got to go wider because you got to rebleed the whole thing. You got to do everything all new. Right. And so it's fun that people are doing it. I think that's great, and it is. I mean, that was one of those things where, like, why are you riding these narrow bars? We're not riding on the road. Like, are you like winding up for a sprint in the Tour de France here? Is that what you're like?
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think I'll end the stream here. Thank you so much for being on the show. I know a lot of our YouTube viewers are super into tires, super into the things that you guys do. So thanks again, Pat and Ron, for joining us. If you guys enjoyed this content, consider supporting the channel on Patreon. We've got lots of fun live streams. And until next time, guys, keep the supple side down. Okay, stream is done. Thank you, guys. Yeah.